everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. If you have been watching the last couple of videos or like a good amount of videos that I've been posting lately, you would know that I recently went to Antarctica on a 2-week voyage with QUARK Expeditions. With QUARK Expeditions, I was able to do the crossing the Southern Circle with them from March 1st to March 14th of 2024 this year, and it was such a great experience. And I know when it comes to booking any type of travel, let alone an expensive, because if you're going to go to Antarctica, they tend to be on the much more expensive side of travel. So if you're going to be spending that much time and spending all that energy flying to the bottom of the world, you want to do your research and know what you're getting yourself into. And this was my first and only time going with QUARK Expeditions, and I wanted to talk about my experience, if I would recommend it again, and everything in between. So I took a bunch of notes on my phone, so I will be looking at them just so I try not to skip anything for you all and really cover everything. So let's just get into it and see, like, would I go on a QUARK expedition again, and if so, which one? So like I mentioned before, just to specify, I've only been to Antarctica once. I've only been on one QUARK expedition, and I've not traveled with any other polar specializing travel companies, so I'm sure there's other ones that are great out there, so I can't really compare and contrast. This is just my experience doing this one expedition with this one polar company. So going into the ship itself, I was able to sail with the Ultramarine. QUARK Expeditions does have several different ships that they own that are all specifically designed and built to be able to go through ice and do these polar expeditions, whether in Antarctica or the Arctic, because they do Arctic trips as well. And I was on the Ultramarine, which is their newest ship. It's very modern, it's very luxurious. I really loved it. Compared to what I usually stay at in hotels on land, like, this was definitely an upgrade. My room was not small at all. There were 2 twin beds, which I've done other cruises, not again in Antarctica, with other companies. And so I know ship rooms tend to be smaller than like a typical hotel room. The beds were twin sizes, which I was expecting them to be more like full sizes, not queen, but full. So the beds were a little smaller than I expected, but there was a whole area for a couch and a more so like living room situation, which I thought was really cool with the TV and everything. And QUARK has really thought through a lot of different features within the room, knowing that it's on a ship, such as like the bathroom door is very heavy, so it won't slam because, you know, ships move. The cabinets, you can like close the cabinet and push down on the handle and lock it, so again, it won't open. And the TVs have like preset movies that you can watch, because again, service is little to non-existent, although better than I expected, not gonna lie, in Antarctica, and things like that. And I really loved the design of it. It was like blue with some yellow with like wood features. It was just really nice. And I don't know about the other ships, but from the photos I've seen, they do not look as new or luxurious. So when you're booking, definitely focus on where you want to go and when, but just know if you don't book with Ultramarine, you may be getting an older style ship, and to have, you know, your expectations be reasonable when you go into it. I've gone on other ships or cruises where they were much bigger, and there was a couple hundred on the higher ends to maybe 1,000 plus. And one thing I didn't know, which makes sense when I heard about it while on my cruise with QUARK Expeditions, is that if there are more than a certain amount of people on the voyage, I think it's like a 200-300 cap, then you are not allowed to actually leave the ship and go either cruise on the little Zodiacs, which are kind of like these inflatable looking lifeboats, and do that, or actually go on land. I can't imagine, say like a company like Princess Cruises, because I've sailed with them before, or like Carnival or something, offers Antarctic cruises, and you go with them and you go all the way south to Antarctica, but then you can't actually get on land when there's the option to be able to do so. Of course, if you aren't able to physically, that's one thing, but I just can't imagine why someone would choose that, you know, option of not going on land. And maybe they're not as expensive or something like that, but if you're able to financially or physically, really look into a company like QUARK or a similar sized travel company with their ships being medium-sized, because you can't get off the ship and explore the land if you are on a major cruise liner with lots and lots of people that's capping near or over like 1,000 people. I don't know the average size of like those big ships, but I know some of them can be crazy big. I just can't imagine not actually going on land. So that is one good thing with QUARK, is that you're able to do that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the cost, which this will really vary between where you go, when you go, how long your voyage is, and if you get a certain discount, because there's sales throughout the year. And it's hard to know when they have sales, because they even tell me, the employees themselves who work at like the QUARK headquarters, they don't even know the sales until they're happening ahead of time. It's really hard to know when the best time to get a cruise with them is. My guess is always with Black Friday. I try to buy tours and trips during that time, but with them, they said it's hard to know. Definitely the earlier you book, the more likely you are to get a better deal. And also, even though they are really expensive, they do also sell out. There is a lot of interest. So also try not to put it off too much, because then you might not be able to go on the trip if it's sold out. And they have different rooms for every single ship. So they have triples in a room. They have like a double, then they have like a double suite. They have a what they call like something similar to like a penthouse, and it like goes up and up based on how many people you have in the room, what kind of room it is. I've seen some ships have maybe a single room. I didn't see it on the Ultramarine. And I know some people do go on these trips as solo people. And even if you go solo, unless maybe you buy like 2 spots, which would be double the price and crazy, they would actually match you with another solo person in a double room. And I've seen that happen. I ended up going with my friend, so we just got one of the cheaper double rooms for us. And I would say, given the luxury aspect of the ship itself and what you get and where you're going, because again, it's much more difficult for the company to have like a specific built polar equipped like icebreaker ship versus a normal ship, and going all that way south and out of civilization. I think it's actually a pretty good deal. Again, it's one of those once in a lifetime experiences, so it's not going to be a tour that you get again and again. Of course, they have their Antarctic cruises, they have their Arctic cruises, so you might do a couple with QUARK or a polar company. But it's not something you're going to be doing on like an annual basis for sure, or even like biannual. So I think if you plan ahead of time, maybe if you get like a triple or the lowest cost double room, you can pay in segments. You don't have to pay everything all in one. You put down the deposit and you pay however often you want. And as long as you pay within, I want to say it's like a 3-month period before the start of the voyage, then you're good to go. And that's what I did last time. You do get like a certain discount if you do pay in full immediately. And that's what my friend did, because she saved up a lot, whereas I did not want to do that, so I paid in segments. So there's options for everybody. And what you get when you book with QUARK Expeditions is, of course, the room, which includes like housekeeping every single day. The room itself and the ship in general is very luxurious. You get all your meals included, breakfast, lunch, dinner. So you do get some internal flights included. So Buenos Aires, Argentina, you get there, and then that city, starting there, you fly to Ushuaia, Argentina, which is the very bottom of the world, or Argentina. And then you get on the ship there. So that Buenos Aires to Ushuaia flight, and then on the way back, Ushuaia to Buenos Aires is included as well. And it's a private charter flight, which I've never done before, so that's cool. You also get included a night's stay in a nice upscale hotel in Buenos Aires, because how they do the trip, for at least me and my friend, is they would fly everyone out. And because Buenos Aires is a long flight for Americans and Europeans, which were the majority of the people that went on this trip, you have the day to fly to Buenos Aires, then you spend the night in Buenos Aires in a hotel that's included with your tour, and then early the next morning you meet in the lobby and you all fly out to Ushuaia. So that hotel is included. You also get all of the Zodiac cruises when you do like 1 to 2 cruises a day pretty much, besides the sea days. Those are included. A 10 to 15 minute helicopter ride is included, which is really cool. So all of like the base tour itself with those excursions, meals, internal flights, nightly events and talks, educational talks, those are all included. The only extra costs that there are would be if you want to do heli trekking, which is when you go on a helicopter and you get dropped off at the top of the mountain and explore. That's quite pricey, so I didn't do it, but that's an extra cost you can do. Paddle boarding or kayaking is an extra cost. And yeah, those are the main things. So there's only a couple of extra things that are an extra cost, but they are a bit hefty. And if you do also want to buy anything in the store on the ship, like I got this shirt, for example, that would be an extra cost while on the ship itself. And if you do want to do any of those extra excursions, I recommend booking them as soon as possible, because I didn't do that and almost everything was sold out and I was put on a wait list for kayaking. Also for the timing of when I did my excursion with QUARK Expeditions, so because I was in Antarctica and that was in the southern hemisphere, their seasons are flipped from the US, Europe, all of that. So their summer is our winter and then flipped around. And in Antarctica, it's no surprise they only do trips in the summer season there, which is our winter season. So I went from March 1st to 14th, so the first half of March. And I think that ship or that excursion was the last or second to last of the season. So I was at the very tail end of the Antarctic summer. And the weather honestly wasn't as bad as what I thought it would be. It usually hovered around like 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, in Seattle where I live, it doesn't get super cold, so I don't experience that cold too often, but I have. And especially with all the layers that you bring and what they have in the store and also the parka they provide, and especially when you're walking on land and being active, there would be times where I was overheated and I would like shed layers, because 32 for a lot of people is cold, but it's not like super cold and unmanageable. It was very doable, and I was pleasantly surprised at like the temperature itself, because when I think Antarctica for the longest time, I couldn't even think of a degree. I just would imagine it being super cold. But it wasn't that bad at all. As for the actual schedule of what we did, March 1st is when people would be flying down to Buenos Aires, and because it's a long flight from Europe or the US, like I mentioned, you have that one-night hotel stay that's included with your QUARK package. And so you get there, and when you get to the hotel, they do have like a couple hour time period where they have like a QUARK team on the spot, and you meet with them to get logistical information, luggage tags, whatever, and just be in the know, like when are we meeting for what do you need to know, things like that, which is really helpful. And then you spend the night there, and then the next morning we woke up and it was an early start. The breakfast at the hotel opened early just for us, and it was only us that was there, but it was the whole voyage of like 200 people, so I can see why they were willing to open breakfast early for us. And so we got up, packed, met in the lobby, and then we took shuttles to the airport. Then we flew into Ushuaia like midday, around like lunchtime or so, maybe late lunchtime. And what was nice is that Ushuaia is this really cute seaside town, and we were able to have a couple of hours, like maybe 3-ish hours to explore. So my friend and I were able to walk to the Ushuaia sign, get photos, and just walk along the seaside town. And it was just really nice because Buenos Aires, it's again summertime in Antarctica and in South America, so Buenos Aires was really hot, and we were there for a good amount of time beforehand. And being even more south in this seaside town with like the sea breeze, it was very nice to not be in the heat anymore. So we were really enjoying that. And then we also were able to get some seafood for lunch, which was really great because it's a, seaside town on the water. And then we went to some souvenir shops, and then there are also like drugstores in the area if you needed anything last minute. But we just did the souvenir shops, and then we got on the buses and then got on the ship, and this was March 2nd. So March 1st, we flew to Buenos Aires, spent the night. March 2nd, we woke up, flew to Ushuaia, had a few hours, got on the ship, And within like an hour or two, the ship was sailing away and we started our official cruise. And we had 2 days crossing the Drake Passage, which a lot of people have horror stories to share about the Drake Passage because it's where like the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean meet along with like this other ocean, and it's like all these bodies of water, and it can be very rough waters and everything like that. And obviously everyone's experience is different because it's going to change from, you know, season to season, day to day, hour to hour. But my experience going through the Drake Passage on the way to Antarctica was a breeze. It was flat water. There was no need to, at least for me, take any medication. I would recommend, if you are hesitant, prevention is key and it's better to take it than not to. I ended up taking the seasickness medication on the ship that they had just as a prevention because you never know. But that, whatever they had on the QUARK ship, and maybe it's just been a while since I've taken it because I likely don't get seasick often, but it made me so tired on top of like already having had traveled through South America for like a couple of weeks prior and traveling all the way down to Ushuaia. My friend and I, we were so tired, like it was too tired. It was at least like we had 2 days at sea so we could like relax and sleep, which was really nice. But if I got to do it again, I wouldn't have taken it because it just made me so overly tired and I didn't enjoy that. I wanted to like be more present and excited in the moment. And so I didn't take it on the way back and I was fine. And it was more rougher on the way back, but not by much. But I just want to be clear that if you have a fear of going to Antarctica solely because of the Drake Passage, don't let that stop you. Just don't let that stop you. Of course, I don't want to promise you that it'll be the same experience as mine, but I've seen videos online that are so traumatized and that was nothing like what I experienced. As for the staff on the ship, they were all incredibly nice. I have nothing bad to say about any of them. There was like one situation where my friend had a bad experience with one of the tour guides and she reached out to QUARK and they took care of it so incredibly well, and she even reached out like on the ship itself. It was towards the later part of the cruise, so we had generally good experiences, and if something went wrong, QUARK was able to fix it. So nothing bad to say about that, and I loved getting to meet the whole team and how passionate they were, and especially the dining staff specifically stood out to me. They were all so incredibly nice, and I would grab a plate of food and oftentimes they would see me and be like, ma'am, let me walk you to your table and hold your plates for you. And I was just like, you don't have to, it's just me walking to a table. And they're like, no, you're on vacation. We want to make sure that you don't have to do anything. So it's just so sweet. And when it comes to the food itself, I really loved the food. Usually breakfast would be buffet style, and they would always have an omelet bar, which is my favorite at any breakfast place. Is if they have an omelet bar, I'm happy. So they have that. And then lunches were also buffet, unless it was like maybe the first or last day or so. Sometimes it wasn't, but for the most part, like 95% of the time it was. And they were really good about switching up the meals and having like different themes on different days. So sometimes there would be like build your own taco day. Sometimes they would have like pizza. They were really good about it. So it was always exciting to see like what they were having for lunch that day. And I would also be surprised sometimes at some of their like options in a pleasant way. For example, I'm Russian and borscht is a really popular Russian beet soup, and they had borscht one day for a soup option because they always have a soup station. And that was really cool because, again, I was not expecting that. And then as for dinner, they always have a more fancy sit-down, white tablecloth kind of a dinner. So that was nice to have a variety as well. And they would have like a set menu where you choose an appetizer, main, dessert, and there would be a couple of options in each section as well. So that was always really nice to see. As for the other passengers on the ship, I expected the Antarctic cruise to be similar to what I've heard Alaska cruises are, which I've never done an Alaska cruise, even though I'm from Seattle. But I was expecting it to be a lot of older folks, like retired 65 plus. And for my friend and I, who were in our late 20s or early 30s, like we'd be kind of isolated. And of course I'm okay making friends and being friendly with anyone, and sometimes it's really nice to meet older people and like learn about life advice from them. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that there's a much bigger variety in age ranges than I expected. Of course, the majority of people were older, but there was still a lot of people that were in their 40s, their 30s, or even their 20s on the ship. There was one girl that I met, and she just graduated from college, so she was in her early 20s, and she was traveling solo on this excursion. So I was pleasantly surprised at the variety of ages. As for some things that I wish I had known or done differently, the first one is the private charter that I had mentioned earlier. Apparently with private charter flights, they have a smaller weight limit, and I wanted to say that it was like 35 or 40 pounds versus the normal 50. And I naturally tend to overpack, but because you have to bring all of these different layers and like specialty items, it was really hard to be able to pack for this trip and not go over that limit, especially also because I was already traveling for a month in South America prior. So I had to bring clothing for hot weather. I had to bring hiking clothing because I was hiking Patagonia, and then I had to bring different layers, both bottom and top, and like wool socks and stuff for Antarctica. So it was very, very difficult to pack for this trip and to bring everything I needed and have it fit like one carry-on backpack and also my camera equipment too. And then also a 50-pound suitcase. And then when I find out like 1 or 2 days prior that I have to like make it down to 40 or 35 pounds, I was like very stressed out because I didn't want to throw away anything of mine. And I brought it down to like, I only had like 1 or 2 of a certain category of items. So I couldn't really get rid of things because then I wouldn't have, say, a base layer bottom, or I'd want to have more than one because I know I'm going to be wearing it every day for nearly 2 weeks straight when I go off the ship and onto the, Antarctic land. And so it was just very stressful, and I wish I had known that ahead of time. I would have preferred, honestly, to go on just a regular flight that allows the 50-pound limit than go on a private charter flight and have to deal with like that 5 to 10 pounds. I basically ended up like spreading items across or wearing extra layers on me, which isn't ideal because I went from like hot to cold with my initial flight with them. But that was one thing that was a little bit stressful and confusing. We got lucky with the weather in general in Antarctica, and obviously we can't control that, and it'll look different on, say, a voyage that you go on. But the second time we went on the Zodiacs themselves, it did rain quite a bit. And I brought rain covers for my cameras, including the one I'm filming with right now. And I was so careful, if I wasn't taking a photo or filming a video clip, I would put my camera away. And then when I had it out, I would have the rain cover on it and just do what I can to help it. But it still wasn't enough, and I ended up damaging my camera. If the weather is not great and you're worried about your camera, whether it's water, whatever, it's better to not risk it, because I did risk it with my camera, and then I wasn't able to use this really nice lens that I bought for this tour specifically. I only used it like 1.5 times the time prior, and then I barely got any good footage when it was raining anyway. And if you do end up taking your camera out and it does get a bit wet, when you go back to your room, take your camera and take off the lens if you're able to take off the lens, open the slot where the memory card and the battery is, take both of those out and just let it dry out. And hopefully that'll help. I only took off the lens on my camera. I didn't take out the battery immediately or the memory card, and so it wouldn't turn on, and that really stressed me out because I didn't know if I damaged my like new camera and my brand new lens, or if it's just the battery or what was going on. I even tried asking the photographer on board, and he wasn't very helpful, to be honest. And like my friend had her camera and a rain cover and everything, and hers was fine, but I guess she ended up taking out her battery, whereas I didn't. And I didn't bring a spare battery because I didn't want to buy new ones. So buy new spare batteries if you don't have them, bring spare memory cards, and if your camera gets wet, take everything out and let it dry. What ended up happening is that my battery just got zapped and was not good anymore, which is fine because I could replace it. But I wasn't able to replace it until I got home, so I wasn't able to use my nice camera. So I had to stick with my point and shoot and my iPhone. So that's something that was a little sucky and stressful because I didn't know until I got home if I had destroyed my camera or if it was just the battery itself. As for activities on the ship that you can do, there is a lot of different lectures and I guess meetings that you could go to on the initial 2 days going to the Drake Passage, just learning about what we're gonna see, what we're gonna do. I thought we were gonna have time all day long for 2 days straight to read, to watch movies, to catch up on sleep, because I was definitely sleep deprived at that point. But I feel like nearly every hour, starting at 9 a.m., there was some kind of something, whether it was mandatory or not. And I'm the type of person that I don't want to miss out. If there's a talk about whales and the types of whales you're going to see, I want to go to that. I want to know what I'm going to see potentially and be in the know and knowledgeable. So it was very information packed and a little overwhelming at times, but also QUARK does a really good job at having things to do, having things scheduled, being able to learn and really build a community and get to know the other staff and the other people just as voyagers on the ship. So that was really great. And then when you're actually in Antarctica, obviously you have your actual zodiac excursions, usually around 2 a day. And the evenings they'll have obviously dinner along with some kind of lecture, and they always specifically change it as it goes along, because a lot of times when we'll have an excursion out, I've noticed we'll see a lot of seals on one day, and then another day, depending on where we are, there will be a lot of whales that day. Or one day we were able to see orcas or killer whales when we were going through this one channel, and not every excursion or ship gets to see it, just depending on chance. You never know with wildlife what you get to see, which is part of the fun. And so that evening, the guy that's the marine biologist on the ship, he completely made a presentation from scratch based on the orca whales that we saw, and he would grab different photos and videos that people took that day of orcas and incorporate it into the presentation and talk about it. So it was really cool to be able to see how the staff would make things along the way and really customize it depending on what we saw, and include voyagers' actual photos and videos as well. And it was just a really cool experience, and they could have pre-made kind of corporate-y kind of presentations, I guess, but that wasn't the case at all, which was really nice. And then in addition to that, most nights there would also be some kind of bar talk or social kind of game that we would play. So we would have kind of a 3-parter in our evenings with dinner, and then sometimes dinner would be after or before the educational lecture, and then the social fun thing would be at the end of the day, which was just really fun to be able to do that, whether it was play games with other people on the ship, or there would be fun stories from certain ship members and they would want to share about it. As for other amenities on the ship, there is obviously a couple of floors dedicated to the rooms, and then you have 2 different restaurants, the main one, and then a smaller, more intimate style casual dining space, which I actually never ate at that one. I just kind of got into the routine of eating in the main one. And then there is a couple of lounge areas in general. There's the Panorama Lounge, which is on the top and great for just spotting wildlife. They have coffee and snacks there available at all times, which was really great because I love tea, and tea was there. When I say coffee, I mean coffee and tea. And then they also have the General Ambassador's Lounge, which is also a hangout spot, but really more that's where all of the lectures are. That's where all of the social events are. So if there's an event, it's usually in the Ambassador's Lounge, and then the Panorama Lounge is where you just chill, and if you want to read, if you want to whale watch, whatever, socialize, then that is available there. And then also on the top of that floor, that's I think floor 7, they have a fitness area and a spa. And if you want any spa services done, I recommend booking them ASAP as you actually are on the ship, especially if you want to do it during like a sea day, because those get booked up pretty quickly. So that's really nice. I did do a massage on board and I absolutely loved it. So those are some options of things you can do as well. So my family and friends back home would ask me, because especially for those who've never looked into going to Antarctica, they couldn't wrap their brains around what it's like. And how I liked to describe it is it's similar to like going on a safari in Africa, where you get on those safari jeeps and you go out and you see what you can spot, and you have to stay contained in the jeeps because it's just dangerous to leave them because there's lions or rhinos or whatever. And this is kind of similar, except think of it as like a ocean, water, ice kind of version of it. So there's these Zodiac boats which seats, I want to say, around like up to 8 passengers. And so you get on the Zodiac and you cruise around the area trying to spot seals, trying to spot whales, birds, penguins, which are separate from the bird category. I'm just putting them because they're flightless. So it was really cool to be able to go out and try to spot animals. And it was surprising to see how much wildlife there is in the parts of Antarctica that we saw. There was never times where we didn't see animals. So being able to spot all the different animals was really cool, along with also learning about the landscape and about ice. And we even like got to pick up ice at one point and like taste it and like talk about it and what makes ice black ice versus like other types of ice with the density and icebergs. And it was just really cool. And sometimes we would do regular Zodiac cruising where you stay on the Zodiac the whole time, and they usually last from like an hour to hour and a half. And sometimes we do a Zodiac cruise along with a landing. So half the time you spend cruising on the Zodiac, and then the other half you actually walk on land. And then that would be like 1 hour this, 1 hour the other. And half the people would do the first half of the 2 hours on land, for example, because you can only have so many people on Antarctic land in certain areas at a time per the law. And then the other half would be cruising, and then they'd flip. That was really, really cool. And it just was basically like an ice ocean safari is how I liked to describe it to people. There were certain days where maybe we only did a Zodiac cruise because of the weather or something like that, which did happen a couple of times. And a lot of this with a lot of other types of travel, especially if it comes to like nature and wildlife, you have to be flexible and you have to really go with weather dependent circumstances. So just know that. And always like the night before at those like educational lectures, there will be somebody that will like show you a colored map and typography, and like showing like the red and the blue of like the wind levels and the like water swells and everything like that, to like keep you informed of what to expect. And yeah, just to be flexible, because they can't control the weather, you can't control the weather, so just enjoy what you can do. So yeah, I think that's the majority of what I wanted to say. And when it comes to would I recommend QUARK, would I do it again, I would definitely say yes. I don't have much to complain about it. The camera situation was not even QUARK's fault at all. The private charter flight with the like surprise difference in weight limit isn't like a big deal when it comes to the overall experience. I really loved the experience. I loved the variety and activities that we got to do. We also got to do the polar plunge, which I didn't mention, where you can jump in the Antarctic waters, which was crazy. And we also crossed the Southern Circle, which was the name of the trip, or the Antarctic Circle. And that was really cool. Almost felt like New Year's because we were counting down. So although there was a lot of similarity with like seeing the same types of penguins maybe and doing the Zodiac cruises, I never got tired of it because it's such a unique thing. I just love being able to like spot wildlife. It's like a game in and of itself. And QUARK does a really good job of building a community and having all these different events going on, even on the sea days. I had my birthday while on QUARK, and I let them know ahead of time, which I recommend doing if that's the case for you. And they gave me a birthday cake, they made me a sign, they left me balloons in my room, they like made animals from like towels for me, and that was not expected. Like they went so above and beyond, and I made friends on the ship. I was pleasantly surprised with the age ranges of people and the luxury level of the cruise. I absolutely loved my experience with QUARK Expeditions, and I'm definitely planning to do a Arctic trip with them. Thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoyed letting you know about my experience, and it's definitely one of my top trips I've ever done, and very much so recommend them. So thank you so much. I hope to see you in a future video of mine, and see you later. Bye.